I had my 40th birthday in the office. I didn't even have enough self-care instincts to take the damn day off, right? And so finally around like 9 o'clock, they trot out a birthday cake that has a tombstone on it. One of those RIP my youth things.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, God, what am I doing? It's half my lifespan. I got to do something different.
This is the Home of Healthspan podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life. Bill, it is wonderful to have you here on the Home of Healthspan podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I know most of our listeners, if not every single one, are going to be very familiar with your work. But before we jump into that, could you define yourself?
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. I would say I am a very lively author, writer, journalist, outdoors person, curiosity seeker, knowledge seeker, adventurer, and also a guy who likes to have a lively good time.
Fantastic. Yeah, the curiosity, the adventure seeking, those seem like gifts that are perpetual, right? Like at any age throughout your life, if you have those, every day can be an adventure. Every day you learn something new. It's what gives that vibrancy to life. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think I got a lot of that from my dad, who he was a corporate lawyer, but he was always seeking knowledge, information, going deeper on things, whether it was French wine or tax law, which was his specialty, or like antique rugs or photography or whatever he got into. He was always seeking knowledge. And I think he passed that down to me.
May I ask, so that's how he experienced his life, and he's your father and you're his son. How did that manifest in parenting or helping you steer? I ask as a father of a 9-year-old, because I feel like I have the same thing following my passion, and I'm curious the best way to instill that, because you seem to very much embody that life and live this incredible, curious, following your curiosity sort of life. And so I'd love to pass that to my child.
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, instead of throwing the baseball or the football like a normal dad, he'd take me to the library. And a library is a place where they have a lot of books, right? And you can kind of follow your nose. And I would pick out whatever book I was interested in. I went down rabbit holes on dinosaurs and Native Americans, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where I kind of learned it. He did sign me up for the soccer team as well. Okay. But it was the library that really set me on the path to becoming who I am today.
Is it the exposure? So a lot of times we only know what's possible based on what we've seen. And in a library, you have the universe of knowledge, depending on the library. And so did it just expand your world of, wow, right? Like maybe what they're teaching me in school this week is not interesting. I'm checked out, but that doesn't mean I'm uninterested, because there are other things here that I really get sucked into. Right.
So it allows you to experience a tremendous range of things. I gravitated to biographies eventually. So different people's life stories and how that a sequence of events built into an extraordinary life. That was one thing. Natural world was a big one. So, you could experience it, you could read about it, then go experience it. And I like that as well, and still do.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of consumption exploration, but I think what your career is, what most people are going to be familiar with, is what you then have contributed to that knowledge base. Certainly with the runaway bestseller Outlive, co-written with Peter Attia, but also your other New York Times bestseller, Spring Chicken. And so how did you take that childhood, that curiosity, that pursuing your interest, to translate that into the life you live today?
Yeah, so I didn't plan on writing a book about aging, a book about longevity. I didn't, when I was younger, I didn't think about it at all, honestly. And then I found myself in New York City working for a magazine It wasn't very fun. And I had my 40th birthday in the office. I didn't even have enough, self-care instincts to take the damn day off, right? And so finally around like 9 o'clock, we're still there, right? Still at work, and they trot out a birthday cake that has a tombstone on it, one of those RIP my youth
Oh,
things.
wow. Okay.
And everybody else I worked with, they were like 26, right?
Okay.
Most of them.
Okay.
And I was like, God, what am I doing? It's half my lifespan, and I'm in my office at 9 o'clock at night. I love the people I worked with, despite the birthday cake, but I got to do something different. And so I did two things differently. One is I pretty quickly transitioned out of being an in-office editor to writing full time. And the magazine, my editors facilitated that. And then the second thing was I started thinking about, okay, I'd been kind of an athlete, not a very good one, but all my life. And I was just different, right? It took a very short time to get out of shape and took a long time to get back into shape.
Yeah.
And then, I had an injury and that took forever to heal from. It's like, okay, what changes as somebody gets older? And then I just started thinking about that and researching that and applying that curiosity to this phenomenon of aging, which is very much, as someone once said, an unsolved problem. It's the great unsolved problem in biology, why and how we age and why people age at different rates, and can we do anything about it? So that started it's been almost, it's been almost 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
Of that quest. And that led to Spring Chicken, which was very much a personal investigation of what's happening to me. And let's look at some other people who are looking at ways to either understand the aging process and modify it.
Yeah. And I definitely want to dig in to everything you learned with that and in writing Outlive. I do want to come back to the first point, though, of realizing the changing the professional side. So you're editing, you move to writing. Now, I got this question recently because I switched industries and people are like, wow, you spend all this time building this brand, building your expertise, your network, everything, you're professional in this one area, and then you went backwards. Was that difficult? And what I don't know with writing, right? Like a teacher, you kind of go teacher to assistant principal to principal. But if someone gets there and says, you know what, I actually just love teaching, or a salesperson to move to manager and say, you know what, I just love sales, it can be seen as going backwards. At that time, did it, whether financially or optically, was it perceived as, wait, you went from editor to a writer? Like you started as a writer and moved into editor, you're going backwards.
Yeah. So instead of moving up, I'd had my go at moving up the management chain and found that, kind of unsatisfying for various ways. I didn't love the magazine I was working for. And I just loved writing, and I loved having I was probably better at writing than editing. There's a financial cost. There was a security cost. It was a big risk, honestly. I didn't have a 401k anymore.
But the risk on the other side was living this life. You're like, I'm not fulfilled and satisfied. So I came back to it because I think it's a really important point for listeners, because they think a lot of people think of life as this linear progression up, but maybe you've gotten to the peak and it's not the peak you want. You have to go back down to go climb the mountain that you actually want to be on.
Exactly. And the irony is, if I had just stuck to the secure, 6-figure paycheck, health insurance, blah, 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 I would have been laid off in like a year anyway, because of financial situation.
So the safe answer is not always that safe too. Yeah. Okay.
The safe thing wasn't the safe thing. Yeah. So instead, I went back to, I started building and creating something that ended up being like this, like enduring pillar of my career. Like my career rests on that decision. Actually, I'd never thought of it that way until just now. But everything I've built is on that one conversation, not long after I turned 40 with my friend and the new editor. I was like, listen, I want to be a writer. So I'll write for you. Cut my pay in half. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it takes tremendous self-awareness and courage, and the rewards are almost infinite. So I not to belabor this too much, but I do think this is important for listeners to kind of hear this story and this modeling, because we only get this one life. I mean, it's really, really important.
Yeah. And, I happen to pick a subject that has value. A lot of people are interested in it. Aging, longevity, health. And what I realized eventually, and then most writers certainly don't, most journalists certainly don't, like, you have like intellectual capital, like the things you learn a lot, right? You become an expert in these fields, and that knowledge is worth something, right? Either in something you create or places where it can lead you to invest, for example, invest your money, invest your time. And people will pay you to not only write, but speak about it.
That was a big learning for me after writing my first book, that the book wasn't where the money was. It was the bigger speaking fees. That's actually where
that's true. That's true.
So that was pretty funny. So you referenced the word pillar, about the pillar of your career. And we think about, our 5 pillars of Healthspan: the fitness, nutrition, sleep and recovery, stress management, and social connection.
Yeah.
And whether it's with Spring Chicken, it's with Outlive, this knowledge base that you talked about, right? You've spent the next 20 years doing a lot of things, but very much digging deep into this area. What is aging? What do people do? What does it work? There was this quote from Quentin Tarantino of, it's not learning, it's not knowledge until you implement it. So I'd be curious kind of across these, right? You had your 40th birthday, you have this kind of epiphany, you change direction, and you go spend 2 decades doing this research, writing these books. There's one side of, hey, I learned these things as objective truths. There's another of, and then they inspired me to do these things. So I'd be curious across those 5, like, what does your life look like today because of all that knowledge that you've gained? Whether it's, maybe we start with fitness, because, right, you talked about adventurism and everything there, finding you on the snow.
I did a really deep dive, right? So I learned a lot about molecular biology. And so I didn't really apply a whole lot of molecular biology to my life. I took a graduate course at the Einstein School of Medicine in the Bronx, part of Yeshiva University. And I went to conferences and I met all kinds of scientists. But it was really interesting, even in these like high level scientific conferences, pretty much everybody was in shape to some extent. And it was really interesting, their behaviors. Like, they would always take the stairs. They would walk everywhere. Like, if you got in the elevator, it would be like saying, like, do you have a cigarette? Like, they always took the stairs everywhere. So, okay, that's interesting. They didn't do studies about it. They just did it. So I thought, okay, there's something here. And it turned out that obviously exercise is an activity, and movement and strength are tremendously important to your aging trajectory at a molecular level, as well as like a structural systems level. But I was already kind of an athlete. Like, I'd done sports in college and always been active. I gotten into, I hesitate to say this because a lot of people are annoyed by cyclists, but I was into bicycle racing for a while. And that was tremendous. That was an amazing experience. It led to some injuries, but as far as like discipline and just making fitness kind of another pillar of life, for several years, that was me. More than a decade. And so that carried over. So that had always been really important to my daily life and my sense of identity. So that didn't really change a whole lot.
Did you get more structure? So I think about like Peter Attia with, okay, VO2 max and the 4x4 and zone 2 and strength training.
Yeah,
I mean, did you
yeah.
put structure around it once you learn, oh, here's specific benefits? Or you say, no, I do this because I know overall it's healthy and I enjoy doing these things. So I'm going to do the things I enjoy.
I'm not a gym guy, right? I like to be outside. I like to have fun. So fun to me, if something's fun, I'll do it. If something's not fun, I'm going to be less likely to do it. But the mistake I was making in those years was I was doing one thing, right? Always training on the bike. So I weighed like 15 pounds less easily than I do now. It's because I didn't have a lot of muscle. And I was doing something that was like, you're going in a straight line, essentially. And so if I learned anything, and this took me a while, but you have to be more diverse. You have to be broader you have to be like in Outlive, we came up with this idea called the centenarian decathlon. Now, I think no centenarian is going to be doing a decathlon, right? You'll be lucky to be standing at that age, right? But the idea is still useful. It's like you're good at a lot of different things. And so I started broadening the repertoire, running, doing some strength stuff, adding especially yoga, flexibility. Yoga's annoying sometimes, but all the woo-woo stuff, but like it's amazing for your body, especially for a man, especially as you get older. It teaches you balance. It teaches you like body awareness. It teaches you connecting your breath and your movements, right? And how to manipulate your breath and how to use your breath to change your mental state. Tremendously useful. Even builds a little bit of strength.
Yeah, the diversity to build resilience, not just optimizing in a narrow focus area.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, I mean, you talked about the breath and coming back to your breath and stress management. I mean, from what stress can do to our hormones and impact longevity, did you put anything more into practice there? Any kind of meditation, any kind of journaling, anything that your research brought up that changed what you do?
Yeah, I'm one of those people who says that they're not a good meditator. I honestly haven't given it an honest go, but it's hard for me to sit still and do that. I'm getting a little bit better, but like long distance cycling for me is like a meditative practice.
Swimming's the same for me.
Yeah, and you're a swimmer. It's interesting. Peter was a big open water swimmer
too. Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. Open water, really cool.
Yeah, I was on the U.S. national team for open water swimming.
Amazing. Yeah. I had a whole period when I was fascinated by swimming because I was kind of bad at it. It's a great exercise modality, but it's also just kind of like being out in the water like that, not in a pool.
The blue mind. Yeah, they talk about blue mind, and it's another way to get into nature. Just get in the ocean and go. Yeah, so I mean, I guess they're not necessarily. There's a lot of blending between pillars, right? So your point of your stress management and meditative state can come through certain fitness modalities you may choose.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I do find I'm the same. Like if I'm really on edge, things, whether it's work, personal, whatever, like getting a good workout in is the best thing I can do for myself, right? Like sitting and meditating for me at that point is not the best. Like if I can start the day and set my tone, that's helpful. But once I'm already in it, I find like I need to burn it out, not sit with it at that moment for me.
Yeah. Like yesterday, like I was feeling kind of, not so great. And at the end of the day, I just finally got on my bike. I had to like fix the bike to get it ready to go and went out for like 45 minutes spinning around, felt 100 times better. It was because I had been able to process, work thoughts, other thoughts, and I just felt better. Movement is by far like the number one thing for me. And I bring a lot of other things into it. Meditativeness, the stress management, trying to vary it, maybe a little social component as well.
Well, let's talk about that actually. I mean, as a pillar, I do think for most people, it's the less obvious one. We know physically, right, it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? So when you talk about getting on the elevator, it's like, hey, would you like a cigarette? It's the same like, hey, do you want to just be by yourself for the week? That's the same like, here's a couple packs of cigarettes.
Yeah.
And so I know that that's coming up more. You seem like a pretty social person. I don't know, did you change anything once you learn more about that and its impact on it? Or you're like, hey, I'm pretty good at this, so it's not much needs to change here.
I haven't done anything sort of intentional in that area, and I probably need to, honestly. I'm making more of an effort to, strengthen or reconnect with people, strengthen connections, find activity partners, that kind of thing. And be more in touch with old friends. I'm in my 50s, right? And a thing that happens after you get to be a certain age, and not to be a downer, but like people die.
Yeah.
Often
Yeah.
people who are fun, in their 30s and 20s. And so I've been blindsided a couple times by that. Like, oh man, I wish I'd been more in touch with that person. And so I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to like go places and visit people and, strengthen connections with people who I have a tenuous connection.
I would encourage, again, listeners, it's not just at a later age, right? We had a prior podcast guest, Jody Wellman, who wrote this book, You Only Die Once. And this principle of memento mori, like just remember, we're all going to die. We don't actually know when it's going to be. And that can be not necessarily just morbid, but also focusing, clarifying, life affirming and giving when you understand there is a finite time. Don't waste it. Like, enjoy those people. You don't know if you'll see them again. That's a principle with my daughter of like, no matter what our tension may be at any moment, like never part from each other without just love. Like, hey, whatever happened, like, because you never know. You never know, the car accident, whatever, like never part with someone without anything but love, because that death comes for all of us. We just don't know when.
Right. And focus on the living part.
Yeah, exactly. Use it not as a morbid thing, but as a, wow, okay, then exactly. I've been given this amazing gift right now to live.
Totally.
Yeah. With doing all these different modalities, one of the things I've been thinking about more is this idea of overtraining. And there are a lot of experts on like overtraining is a myth, right? You see these professionals, how much they train, they can do all this. Like, you are not overtrained. There's no normal person overtrained. I say, yeah, but they also recover professionally. Right? They sleep 12 hours a day. They get all this. And so you might not be technically overtrained, but you may be under-recovered for what you're doing. So what have you learned in your research on the importance of sleep, recovery, like how to bake that into your life?
Professional athletes are very bad. And I've spent a lot of time around, different kinds of athletes, mostly in sort of niche sports, but they're kind of a bad comparative set. They're not like us.
Yeah.
Like from the get-go, right? Not just talent, but physically, the way their bodies are built. And they don't have jobs typically. Or if they do have a job,
their job. They're a professional at that thing.
Yeah. They don't have like a different job and a family to take care of. And so do less. If that's you, like nobody needs to be, and people are going to hate this, but like nobody needs to be doing an Ironman every quarter, right? That's a lot.
Yeah, that
is a lot. That is going to like beat your body down. Most people don't have that problem. Most people have the other problem, right?
Right.
Going from 0 to like 30 minutes, right?
Yeah,
that's where most of us are, right?
But that's where 90% of the benefit is, right? Is that first 30 minutes. It's not the last 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Someone who's an influencer and works out 2 hours a day, is that are they going to live any longer than if they worked out 90 minutes a day or an hour a day? Probably not. But the person who doesn't do anything and then starts walking 30 minutes a day, they've just made a huge jump. And the research overwhelmingly shows that.
Yeah. That was another podcast guest kind of woke me up to that of like, look, the gap from 50th percentile, let's say VO2 max or whatever, and 0 is enormous in terms of longevity and health span, et cetera. But the gap from 50th to 90th percentile or 99th is just not that big. Like it's probably not worth the squeeze for that extra juice. If you're a professional athlete, it's very important. But if you're saying, hey, how do I want to balance my life to make the most of it and be healthy and have this health span to do the centenarian decathlon, maybe the 50th, 60th percentile is the right target.
You want to be better than where you are now.
Yeah.
For most people. But, that elite sliver, I mean, they really do well if you're looking at VO2 max as the ultimate predictor. I mean, VO2 max is something that can be measured.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the ultimate test. It might be how fast you can swim a mile or how fast you can run a mile. That might be a better sort of functional. I'm trying to say there are more people who need to start doing something or do maybe a little bit more than they are now, go to the next level, than there are people who are concerned about overtraining. But overtraining is a real thing. Some of my veteran endurance athlete friends now, like in their 60s, 50s, are having like AFib type issues. They're having issues, or they're having like spine issues, that kind of thing.
And I guess my question there, from your research, what you've learned, like what you and Peter did, is the separate side of that on the recovery and the sleep. Because it could be like, we think about, again, Healthspan, you're balancing across these 5 pillars, and maybe not balancing, it's equilibrium, but saying, hey, if I have X number of minutes or hours to put in, maybe this 20 minutes you're currently putting into fitness, out of 80 minutes, you're better off taking it and getting 20 minutes more sleep and only doing 60 minutes of fitness, because it's the recovery, it's the sleep that you're really behind the 8 ball here. Right. And so I guess that's my question of, like, how do you think about your sleep and recovery based on what you've learned?
Yeah. And this is kind of why I question the whole 5 a.m. club thing. Like, okay, you're getting up at 5 a.m. Are you cheating yourself of half an hour or an hour of sleep that you really needed? Right.
Yeah.
And are you a person what's your cycle like? Right. Are you someone who does their heavy duty sleeping like I do from like 5 to 8 in the morning? So I pay the price getting up before about 7:30. That's just my cycle.
So what are your normal hours, right? Do you find your best writing times at night or something, and so you just have a more shifted schedule?
No, best is in the morning, actually. Sharper cognitively. So doing less and sleeping more, I think, is never a bad idea. If you're consistently sacrificing sleep to get another half an hour of workout in, you need to look at whether you might be, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a cost benefit to any trade-off like that.
And going slower, I think, is also good. Not every workout needs to be a total slam fest, right?
I mean, there are a lot of lessons here I need to start putting into practice in my own life on this, of not going to failure in every single set, and what the recovery and everything.
You do it when you need to, but yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, given, because I was the child of 2 physicians that initially was taught sleep's not important, right? Like you can train yourself not to need it.
Yeah, amazing.
And scientifically, it's not true, right?
Yeah,
You actually do. Your body does need it. And here are all the costs. When you talk about robbing Peter to pay Paul, this, right? You've done the research, you've seen it. How does then sleep fit into your life? How do you structure it, or how do you prioritize it? Like, what do you do in your own life knowing that?
Sleep has been a lifelong struggle. I come from generations of insomniacs. There's a strong streak of, bad sleeping in some parts of my family. So I've had issues with it. I'm doing pretty well now. And I think I'm working on things like going to bed a little earlier, right? Doing some reading before bed. A lot of people talk about journaling in the morning. You should really journal at night, because you've done a lot of stuff in the day. You have a lot of thoughts about what's going to happen in the next days. And so rather than having those turn over in your head, offload them. So I write things down. Typically, I'll what typically happens is I'll go to bed, I'll lie down, I'll be thinking about 10 different things I'm going to do the next day, or what I'm going to write, or some clever phrase, like, turn the light back on,
Yeah.
right, and then go to
Yeah.
bed. And my wife's like, what are you doing? Like, sorry. And then I started doing like the cup of tea at night, and that
Mhm.
helps, just having a little ritual that signals time to wind down.
And you do it, you have kind of a typical time, right? Like it's this psychological trigger for you of like, hey, now my body's getting into this state because at 10:30 I make this cup of tea or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. Or trying to do it a little earlier so I don't have a bunch of liquid in my body.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That matters. Yeah,
yeah,
that was a big change for me actually. Of I think it was Lane Norton talked about the focus on hydration, hydrating.
oh my
That
God, yeah,
you're picking up pennies but giving up dollar bills, and how it could be interrupting your sleep. And so just changing my timing of how much fluid I drink. So like after 4 o'clock, I just don't have that much. I went from waking up like
yeah,
3 times a night to mostly zero. And like that's a
yeah,
big difference in
yeah,
terms of quality of sleep.
yeah. And most people, lugging around the giant water bottle are probably overhydrating generally, and then that's one of the ways it manifests itself.
So like hydration, right? And you could too much of a good thing there. I'm reluctant to get into it, but I feel like we have to on nutrition, right? This third rail of health, because you have the carnivores, the ketos, the vegans, all the different religions, I guess, out there. What did you in your research? You feel like you walked away with a solid understanding of like, hey, here are some objective truths. Here are some things we don't know. Here's what I'm going to do differently as a result, or not.
Objective truth, yeah, that's tough in nutrition. In spring chicken, and then to a greater extent in Outlive, Peter and Peter has a lot of experience in the world of nutrition. He came from kind of he was overweight and unhealthy, and then he did some keto stuff, and he was very involved in that community for a while, and now he's not. And we kind of looked at these diet wars, and it's really like one of those pro wrestling shows that gets like completely out of control, and you have like the keto guy jumping in and slamming the vegan, and then the carnivore, and
Yeah.
then paleo
Paleo.
throws a chair. It's
Yeah.
just absolute chaos. And we looked at this crap, and we looked at the studies, and the studies, just the quality of research just isn't great. It's kind of clickbaity, right?
You're right.
23 cashews will help you live longer, study says. Well, it doesn't really say that, or whatever. Low fat diet. So we took a step back and just looked at, okay, what's our goal? Our goal is to avoid obesity, metabolic dysfunction, diabetes, anything down the road of diabetes, anything in that direction of the compass is going to harm your longevity, because diabetes and insulin resistance and overweight are massive risk factors for all of these horseman diseases, which is what will kill most of us. So we don't want to go in that diabetes direction. Whatever you need to do to get yourself off that trajectory is what you need to do. And it varies for every person. So if you look at diet specific studies, you'll find like, oh, the average person lost 3 pounds in 6 months. But then you'll find that like some people actually gained 10 pounds and other people lost 10 pounds. So everybody's super different in terms of how they respond and what they can do. So we tried to whistle the wrestling match to a stop and say, here's what matters. The interesting thing though, this book took 5 years to write, Outlive. And at the beginning, Peter was super into fasting.
Yeah, I was going to ask on this because I got super into fasting because of Peter, and then he stopped, and I'm like,
yeah,
because I used to be like, oh, there are these magic pills: exercise, sleep, nutrition, and fasting. Fasting is this like magic pill for health, and then he kind of fell off that train. So I'm really curious your take there.
Yeah, yeah. So one good thing about my co-author is that he is able to change his mind. But then it does make you question. Like, you sounded very convinced about fasting a year ago. So I have thousands of words in my hard drive still about fasting
Okay.
and fasting studies. And he used to do a pretty significant fast once a quarter. And I think what happened was, COVID happened, and he wasn't going to New York, which is where he did the fasting thing.
Because he wanted to do it away from his family. Yeah.
Frankly, like, to me, the idea of spending a week in New York and not eating anything, I mean, that's insane.
Torture. Yeah.
You're a crazy person. Like, go do it somewhere else,
Yeah. But I mean, I get the principle, right? Because you don't want to be the weirdo in your family. Like, family dinners are an important thing. And so I can understand. He's like, look, this is my time where I'm not with them. Yeah.
No, I'm totally joking. But what happened was, and I was meanwhile dreading this, because I was like, oh, I'm going to have to do this to write about it. And I don't enjoy going without food for long periods. But COVID happened, stopped the fasting, and I, 6 months go by, and we get back in touch, and we're sort of like, I weigh like 10 pounds more than I did, and it's all muscle. So he realized what the data had shown. Meanwhile, I'd been researching fasting and finding that actually there weren't terrific outcomes. I mean, there was weight loss, but there wasn't a lot of data supporting other good outcomes of it. So that, combined with his N of 1 experience where he lost muscle mass, that turns out to be confirmed in the data, right? Studies of the alternate day fasting diet, which was popular, a while back, found that the people lost more muscle on that. And people, maybe the quote intermittent fasting has less of a negative consequence, but it has less of a positive consequence too.
Right.
So there are good things that happen with fasting, but the muscle mass loss is something you really have to think about. And most people, aren't training 2 hours a day, so they can be really affected by it. But people in severe metabolic dysfunction, or somebody who just absolutely can't lose weight and is tremendously overweight, they can think it might work in special circumstances.
I think it's a relevant point across all of this, because it really is this managed portfolio, right? Well, if you're working out too much and it's stealing from your sleep, or you're fasting too much and it's stealing from your lean mass, and you have to think about these things together, because it's not a single data point. It's not a single pillar. It's your overarching health and health span that really has to come together as a whole.
And it's not one size fits all either. Yeah, we're not going to tell everybody to go out and fast. And so I was kind of like, it's not everybody needs to fast, like obviously.
Well, Bill, your work has been tremendous, right? I obviously love your books, and I'm not the only one. Both New York Times bestsellers. They're changed life, right? I got it from my dad. It's on his nightstand. Almost anyone I talk to is like, oh, Outlive, right? That is the first thing out of their mouth when I talk about what I do for a living. So it's incredible the impact that something so, in many ways, technical, right? Like, it's not an easy book. It is a big book that gets into like heavy stuff in intelligent ways, but has really captured the cultural imagination for the past few years. And it's amazing, like, what it can do for society. So thank you for your work. You've covered a bunch. For someone who's may just be getting started, like, there's so many things, and each of these books have so much, that may be intimidated or overwhelmed. Is there a place you would suggest people get started?
Yeah, well, thank you for all of that. It is long and technical and overwhelming. And I think one of our blind spots, like if we had to rewrite it or come out with a new edition, I think would be to focus more on people who are starting, people who need to change, break, adopt new habits, that kind of thing. There's one sort of hack that I won't hesitate to call it a hack, but one thing that I tell people to do, and that is, like, sign up for something, commit to something, and it can be an event, it could be a competition, it could be, say, a mile swim somewhere, open water mile swim somewhere. It could be a 10K run, something that seems it could be, people overemphasize the marathon. It could be a 100-mile bike ride or something that feels outside of your comfort zone, something that if you had to do it today, you maybe couldn't do it. So you have a goal and you set it out there a few months, and then that then requires you, because we are motivated by fear of failure.
Yeah.
And right. So that then requires you to come up with a plan, and not just for the requisite training you need to do, but also that starts to ripple out and affect what you eat, when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed, right? How much you drink.
It's a really good point. It's the one thing you can change that will change all these other things that matter. It's this one leverage point. That's a really good point.
Make a commitment. It could be just like, all right, I'm going to join a run club. And so I have to show up every, Tuesday night, and I don't want to be the slow one, right? You don't want to be DFL. So you need to start, that then becomes something. You're not going to the bar well, you might go to the bar after the run club, but you're not.
But then you're hitting the social connection, so it's still good.
Yeah. So committing to something, and it can be a social thing. It can be like in the UK, they have these groups of I'm coming back to swimming for you.
Yeah, the wild swimmers.
Yeah, and they meet, and they're not swimming for too long, right? Because it's bloody freezing, but they're hanging out, and you're swimming a little bit.
I mean, you're getting social, you're getting in nature. I really like that. Commit and like time bound. So this specific thing, whether it's on Tuesday nights, I'm doing this, or this specific event, but having something specific and set to a time. And then I really like how your point is it touches all these other things to make that happen. That's really a great one.
Yeah. Your diet gets better. Your sleep has to get better. Like I'm training for something called the Pan Mass Challenge. It's a cancer fundraising bike ride in August. And so I have to ride more. So that means I have to work a little more effectively. So that means I have to screw around less, not be on this thing. Yeah. This thing stays in the house and I'm in my office, ideally.
Yeah. Well, Bill, this has been fantastic. Again, thank you for all your work today. I know we talked about before, we didn't reference, like, you have another upcoming book that I'm very much looking forward to reading as well. But thank you for everything you've already put out into the world and all you do.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. And the next book, I think, will be a nice evolution of some of what we've talked about.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on lively.com. Enjoy a lively day.